Am I a Zionist? I guess so, but I'm also someone who supports the French living in France, the Nigerians living in Nigeria, and the Canadians living in Canada. I'm Bishop Robert Stearns. I'm here at Christ Church inside the old city walls of Jerusalem. When you walk inside Jaffa Gate and you come just to the right, you find the oldest Protestant church in the Middle East. Christ Church, an Anglican church built in the 1800s that has served the people of this region for some time. But I want to talk for a moment today about a term called Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism. What is Christian Zionism? There are a lot of groups right now online on the internet. They're mostly the enablers of Hamas and Hezbollah. They would seek to normalize this kind of attack and massacre. And instead of calling those people for what they are, which is bloodthirsty terrorists, they like to call them resistance fighters. But they're beginning to attack online Christian Zionism and Christian Zionists. So I've been identified as one of these dangerous Christian Zionists. So let's talk about that for a moment, because I'm not so sure that I'm a Christian Zionist. I'm not so sure that I'm a Christian Zionist. Let's break it down for a moment. First of all, what is Zionism? Zionism is the belief that the Jewish people who are indigenous to this land, who trace their lineage and their peoplehood to this land, and specifically to this city, over 3,000 years, there has been an uninterrupted Jewish presence in the land of Israel for 3,000 years. Sometimes it's been more, sometimes it's been less, but wherever the Jewish people have gone, they always have prayed towards Jerusalem. They always have prayed for Jerusalem. They always have prophetically declared that next year we will be in Jerusalem. So for 3,000 years or more, the Jewish people have called the land of Israel their home. They have been the indigenous people to this land, not for decades, not for centuries, for millennia. Millennia. So Zionism is the belief that these people, though they've been cast out of the land and then brought back, and then cast out again and then brought back again, Zionism is the belief that the indigenous people of this land, the Jewish people, have a right to live here in a Jewish democratic state. So I can't figure out why this is so confusing. Do the French have the right to live in France? Do Italians have the right to live in Italy, and Koreans the right to live in Korea? Do they have a right to speak their language, to keep their customs, to keep their holidays? Do they have a right to decide the policies of their nation or not? Why is this so difficult and revolutionary and extraordinary? The Jewish people have lived in this land for over 3,000 years. And it is well documented the times that other nations have come in, invaded, and forced them out. But even in forcing them out, there was always a remnant here, and the Jewish people never lost their sense of connection and identity to this place. And so, not after the Holocaust, as the lies would tell you, but even in the 1800s, Jews began to move back to this land. And they lived as they live today, in peaceful coexistence with their Arab neighbors in the land of Israel. Yes, I said peaceful coexistence. I had breakfast this morning with a Jewish family, an Israeli family. That particular family have been in this land for 7 generations. 7 generations they've been in the city of Jerusalem. Their son is 21 years old. He's a soccer player, a professional soccer player. He plays on a team here in Israel. He told me in that entire team, there's 25 members of the team, he said there are 3 Jews and the rest are Arabs. I said, how is that? Do you get along? Is there fighting? Is there tension? He said, we're like brothers. You're not going to hear that on CNN. You're not going to hear that from the apologists, the enablers of Hamas and Hezbollah. Let me be clear. These groups that are claiming to be pro-Palestinian, not all of them, but many of them are simply enablers of Hamas and Hezbollah and ultimately Iran. They want to suck you in to a narrative that actually is harming the Palestinian people and their hope for the future. Why? Why? Because ultimately, they are not calling for peaceful coexistence. They are not calling for an actual solution to the problem here. They're calling for the end of the Jewish state of Israel. Now let's go back to our question. What is Zionism? Am I a Zionist? Am I a Christian Zionist? Well, Zionism to me seems like basic human rights. The French can live in France, the Italians can live in Italy, the Nigerians can live in Nigeria, and the Jewish people can live in the land of Israel. The Israelites can live in Israel. And they live here alongside Arabs, alongside Druze, alongside Baha'i, alongside a host of other people. They live in harmony, they live in coexistence. Is it perfect? No. Guess what? I live in New York. Is New York perfect? No. These who would say that Christian Zionism is some scheme to twist the scriptures and to make it political. Folks, let me make it easy for you. I'm a Christian and I'm a Zionist, but I'm not even sure that I'm a Christian Zionist, because if I wasn't a Christian and if I wasn't a Zionist, I would still believe that people groups have the right to live in their land and to make their laws, to live in their culture, to speak their language, to celebrate their holidays, and to work out their internal policies of how they deal with immigration, how they deal with minorities, etc., etc. So let's speak to you people challenging Christian Zionism. Why don't you just quit with your ridiculous demonization, twisting, fabricating of the story? The Jewish people are living in the homeland that they have called their homeland for over 3,000 years. They didn't start coming back here after the Holocaust as some guilt of Europe. They started coming back in the 1800s when pogroms, attacks, were happening in Russia, in Poland, and throughout the rest of Europe. They began coming home and they lived as they live today, in peaceful coexistence with anyone who wants to live in peace with them. Do you know what's interesting today? Do you know what's interesting? There are no Egyptians who've been killed by Israeli rockets. There are no Jordanians who've been killed by Israeli rockets. Do you want to know why? Egypt is not firing rockets at Israel. Jordan is not firing rockets at Israel. Folks, you're being lied to. Ceasefire now, ceasefire now. Yeah, ceasefire right now. Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, Lebanon, stop firing rockets and then accusing Israel of genocide when Israel just defends itself. So let me be clear. I'm a Christian, and I think that being a Christian calls me to be a peacemaker, calls me to be someone who takes the time to deeply understand situations and work for genuine peace. Not kumbaya, light a candle, recite poems peace, the hard work of actual peace. That means being educated in the true facts on the ground about this place. The Jews started coming home in large groups here in the 1800s. They were reunited with family members who already were living here and had lived here in an uninterrupted way for millennia. They began coming home in the 1800s. That obviously excelled when Europe was slaughtering them after World War II. And then in 1947, November 29th, 1947, in full view of the whole world, the nations of the world voted for a two-state solution, and Israel said yes. They didn't have Jerusalem. They didn't have nearly the amount of territory that they have right now. And immediately, 5 Arab armies attacked them. Do you know what's happening today? Right now, today, I'm sitting here today, what's happening? Those Arab armies are still attacking them. And there's been a little break here, and a little break there, and a little break there. But since 1947, the faction of the Arab world that refuses to accept the existence of a Jewish state is not dedicated to peace. And they want to call me a Christian Zionist. I'll have to figure out a term for you. And I could call your names out right now. I'm really tempted to call your names out because you know who you are. But you've got a term too, because you're taking verses of scripture and twisting them and twisting facts. Shame on you that you don't remember the 10 commandments that says, do not bear false witness against your neighbor, you liars. So I'm a Christian. That means I work for peace, and that means I live in a commitment to truth. Am I a Zionist? I guess so, but I'm also someone who supports the French living in France, the Nigerians living in Nigeria, and the Canadians living in Canada. So call me whatever you want to call me. I call myself a human being who understands that people have rights. They have rights to live in dignity, peace, and prosperity. And the Palestinian people have rights. They have a right to live in peace and dignity and prosperity. So you enablers of Iran, you enablers of Hamas and Hezbollah, you enablers of those who are truly calling for genocide, shame on you. Shame on you that you put the label Christian on yourself when you sit there and enable the forces of evil who are calling for the genocide of the people living in this land.